without further ado, I'd like to introduce David Crane from Google Ventures.
Good late morning, early afternoon. Thanks to everybody for coming to Google and convening together around what's guaranteed to be a super exciting screening of a very, very important documentary. I think we're brought together today because something called the Global Employee Resource Group Summit has been taking place for the last couple days. I'm reading my Q notes here, as you can tell. This is an important activity, though. This is a group of Googlers that have come together to focus attention and time on planning, leadership development, and relationship building, all organized around diversity. I've been at Google a dozen years, and one of the sources of great personal pride is watching this diversity initiative first be dreamed up and then actually built, scaled, and executed. And I'm so proud of what my colleagues do in all areas of diversity, particularly in this one area that we're spending some time paying attention to today. This documentary, this is, I think, a multi-year project at CNN. We're in the fourth year. This particular program, as you will soon see, I had a small participation role. I spent some time being able to see a number of very inspired, very talented entrepreneurs that spent a summer in Silicon Valley sort of chasing their dreams and trying to understand whether they could turn those dreams into businesses. It was a pleasure to see them, to interact with them, to see their first pitches, their first public articulations of what they're doing. And in just a few minutes, you're going to see sort of the output of an interesting project that CNN has invested in to chronicle this journey, to illustrate some of their challenges, some of their successes. As soon as the documentary is over, there will be a very interesting panel discussion led by a few folks that are sitting up here, so please stick around. And without further ado, let's roll that video. Thank you.
So we expect that you're going to tell everyone to watch, right? November 13th? Okay, great. I'm Michelle Thornton. I work for CNN. I get to hang out with Soledad sometimes. I try not to stand too close because she always tries to look kind of cute. And I have, or at least my job at CNN is to monetize content like this because it's important for two reasons. One, of course, funding. That's what this conversation is about. But advertisers want to have this conversation with you guys. You guys are consumers. And they want to let you know they respect content like this. The other reason I want to do it, let me tell you, I never get to wear blue jeans at CNN, okay? So thank you so much for hosting this. When LaFawn Bailey calls, we say yes. We don't ask what it is. But in all seriousness, we don't see conversations like this, right? We see comedy and we see other genres, but we don't see real conversations about real serious topics. So we want you to support and watch and tweet and Google Plus, right? This type of content. So I have the privilege today to introduce all of the panelists. I was told by my good friend Soledad to tell you that this wasn't the ending, so there is a cliffhanger. So you'll get to see hopefully some good news. Our moderator, Navarro Wright, is it says here CTO. Don't you guys hate that? He's the Chief Technology Officer, in case someone didn't know what that meant.
Well, this is the one place they would actually know what that
means. Okay, all right, good. See, I kind of fit in, I kind of don't. And then, of course, Soledad O'Brien, who, by the way, is our new morning anchor starting in January. Yay. With that being said, we cannot let her get away from telling stories like this. So we're going to see her around these docs, but she'll also be the face from 7 to 9, so we're very proud of her. Second up is Chris. Chris, all right. He said he might sing a song for us. Or maybe not. He said the Black Eyed Peas were here yesterday, so how come we didn't get to come yesterday? What's really going on? And then last, as you saw on the screen, is Angela. Oh, here goes Angela. Angela Benton. So, you know, we can't show a doc and not have a conversation. They're going to talk, and then they're going to allow you guys to ask some questions, so enjoy.
So how's everybody doing? It's a little different from the last time I sat in this chair, as you could see on the doc. So first, I'm sorry, I had to run over there and charge up my iPhone. I won't keep a battery. If you guys can suggest another platform I might switch to afterwards, let me know. We can talk after. So this is going to be really informal. You know, we're going to have some conversation up here. I want you guys to be involved. I'm hoping you have a lot of questions, and we'll make it engaging. But first, I want to start with Soledad. You know, for people who may not know about the Black in America series, maybe you can talk about why you and CNN feel it's important to tell these stories and what the effect has been.
I'll have to start at the very beginning then. The Black in America series started in 2007 when we started working on a 6-hour 3-part documentary, which really started with the 40th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. And I was asked by the head of CNN Worldwide, do you think there would be an interest in a look at the assassination of Dr. King and also African Americans, Black in America? So with that, we sort of took the ball and started running with it, and we did a 2-hour documentary on the assassination of Dr. King, and then two more days of 2-hour docs with our first Black in America, and it was wildly successful. Some people loved it, some people hated it, but what it did do is spur a lot of conversation about stories that clearly were not being told. And in fact, probably the biggest compliment that I got when people would stand up at anything else I was doing and say, when are you doing Asian in America? How about Caribbean in America? My own mother said, oh, so no Afro-Cubans in your little documentary. Interesting. Those are your own people you let down. So, you know, it was just really successful, and I think it was a moment that people felt, for me, we saw that we could do these really interesting stories about people whose stories really didn't get told, and you could also win. It was wildly successful ratings-wise. It was just a big win across the board, and it didn't have to be sort of stuck in a, well, we're doing this programming because it's a good thing to do, and we don't, if no one watches it, that's okay because we've done our good deed on the diversity front. It was like, wow, we can win with this. And then after that, we started doing Latino in America. And then we created the unit in America in order to tell a bunch of stories. We did gay in America, Muslim in America, education in America, working in America, looking at coal miners. And again, we were just really successful. So out of that, the Black in America series, we kept thinking about, well, what are the stories you could do? The first one was really a survey. The third one was a look at the second one was another survey, and we decided then to take a look in the third one at a single topic, which was a church and a pastor and what that church was doing at a very tough time economically. And then this one, of course, was this. So we try to connect what's happening in the story, single subject story, to what's also happening in the world at that moment. So how do you make it relevant news-wise, but also compelling, interesting? Because a documentary is a story that's unfolding in real time, where something is at risk, or you're cheering for people, or you're rooting for people, and there's something happening. That's our definition of how we do documentaries. And so we really think on this one in particular, you end up touching a nerve when people start arguing about the parts of your documentary, right? Because it means you've really hit something relevant that people are willing to go and shout about their perspective. And I love, ultimately, for all of our documentaries, it's about a conversation. So if we're able to get people to stand up and yell on one side or the other, or talk, hopefully, in a more calm tone about one side or the other, to start a conversation, then I think we've been really successful.
So I'm sure we could all think of 1,000 topics we'd want them to cover. Can you talk about why you chose this topic?
You know, again, I think for documentaries, any documentary, are the characters great? We went out, Jason Samuels, our producer, who's in New York today, but who's been literally emailing me constantly, tell me, what's the blow-by-blow? What are they laughing at? What do people think? But he came out and really met with Angela, and first over the phone, and then met all the people in the house. Because the truth is, are they good characters? We call them characters. Are they interesting? Do you care about them? Do you want to see them win or lose or struggle? If you do not care, it will be a terrible documentary. And then it was clearly in a house, 8 people in a 3-bedroom house was already going to provide some issues in terms of just people close together in a small space who have a lot going on and who are stressed. As Pius pointed out in the doc, no drinking, no hot tub, so it certainly wasn't going to be the real world anything, but it certainly, I thought, was a way to explore an issue that was relevant. And then again, does race matter? Is a very interesting question to me. I think all of our Black in Americas really ultimately can be boiled down to that question. Does race matter?
Sign off from the crowd. So, Angela, can you tell us a little bit about what made you decide to create the New Me Accelerator?
I'll try not to get too lengthy, but so as you saw, I had a site called Black Web 2.0, and I started that about 4 years ago. And then last year, 2010, I had a conference called the New Me Conference, and we invited entrepreneurs and people, in government, and also people in private equity. And it was a day and a half, and we basically closed it out with brainstorming, what it would really take for minority entrepreneurs to be successful in the technology industry. And one of those things was an accelerator, but the idea just seemed so huge, so it was just in the back of my head, kind of someplace. Wayne, I've known for a while, actually online, how I meet most of my friends. But he had the idea for a startup house, so it brought really this residential component to what an accelerator is. And then also when I went back and looked at my notes from the conference, it really helped satisfy a lot of the barriers that people said existed. So, it's really expensive to live out here. People felt like they were disconnected and couldn't actually come out here and just kind of relocate. So that was one thing, that really helped lower that barrier. And then people just felt like they didn't have a network at all, and that really hindered their ability for their companies to be successful. So giving them mentorship, a network, and just real, not a curriculum, but just knowledge from other people's experiences, it just kind of turned into an accelerator.
So, Chris, you were here at the welcoming site. You were sitting in the audience. Maybe can you give us some of your impressions that day of that event?
Sure. You've got entrepreneurs who have never been in that position before, maybe being somewhat on the spot, and getting access to minds like yours and David Crane. And getting that real life, an old mentor of mine used to call this the oh shit moment. This was, this is the real moment. And you could see from that moment on over the course of the summer, and I think that the piece captured it really well, it just elevating the stakes of the whole thing, making it really real. We were proud to see that, be at the beginning of seeing that, and then seeing that transformation. And also knowing that, that raising that game and having that success was within their reach, because now we're here. We're part of the mix in Silicon Valley. Yeah.
So Angela, we know that was a challenging day for all the entrepreneurs. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other challenges you faced that you maybe didn't expect to face when you guys started this program here in the Valley?
Yeah, there were a lot of very little reasons, very little things that I just different situations. I really just expected, I guess, people to be a little bit more like me and just really focus in on the work and not, other issues, and really commit to that for 9 weeks. But there were, other things that, came up around transportation, around what type of food people wanted to eat, and just other, kind of little things like that I didn't even think of at all.
So how important was it to do it here in Silicon Valley?
Oh, it was hugely important, mainly because this is the epicenter, for technology. So it really had to be here. Not only that, there aren't really many minorities kind of African Americans specifically, really in the area. So for us to do it in New York or Atlanta, it would not have had the same impact at all.
So that after meeting the characters and kind of getting in depth in their stories, can you talk about maybe who surprised you or who kind of stood out to you in terms of their stories, the things you learned about them?
When I meet people, again, because my job is, I'm a storyteller, right? So my job is to sit in on this and say, so what's the best way to tell this story? Bring this, and not just to a room of people who are in technology, but to a room of people who know nothing about technology, or their only technology is, their mobile device, and that's it. And how do we make that story live and be relevant and interesting? So it really was digging into people's stories. For me, what struck me about Angela was all that she was juggling. That here's a woman who's a single mom of 3 kids, who she has left behind at home while she is working on this big idea. And she's got this company she's also trying to launch at the same time. And she has all these sort of little things in the accelerator that she has to manage that have popped up, some big little things and some little things. And every time I'd see Angela, she was pacing on the phone and pacing, on the phone and pacing. When I asked the question, the first time I saw Angela, we drove up and Jason said, "Oh yeah, that's Angela. The house is down there, but that's Angela." And there was a woman in sweats pacing up and down. So I'm like, that's the woman running the house. She's pacing up and down. So we really wanted to kind of capture that incredible pressure that is on someone who both really personally wants to make a difference, but also really personally wants to be successful too, and is a person who has, before, many times in her life, had people have low expectations of what she can achieve. And she's always said, well, low expectations doesn't mean I'm not going to achieve. So we wanted to get that in there too. I love Anthony, and I think when I watch the doc, I always feel that my love of Anthony comes out because he's the youngest, he's 25. And he told me, and we didn't really have the ability to put it in the documentary, and I tried 8,000 different ways. But the thing he said to me, which broke my heart and made me love him more, he said, he started really playing around with video games and really just being in technology when he was about 7th grade, he said. And he just loved computers. He loved technology. But as he went through school, there was sort of no one to kind of capture that and channel him into, well, if you love that, you should be doing this. Well, if you love that, you could be doing this. And so he was sort of, by his guidance counselor, who sounds like kind of a jerk, kind of forced in a direction of, well, just go to community college and do this and do that, and not really put on a program where he could take what he's passionate about clearly and combine that with a fabulous job at the end. And he said, if me today had been in front of me as a 7th grader, my life would be totally different. It just honestly, it broke my heart. It just, because he said it in a way, and the way I've said it is so inarticulate compared to how Anthony said it. He said, I would be a totally different person if the person I am today stood in front of a classroom full of me, young men, who love games, and who love that kind of technology. And I said, be an engineer. It matters, because you can create those games you love. He's like, and so this is his reason for trying to be part of the accelerator, right? Is he feels really connected to all those other kids who look like him in Newark, New Jersey. And, we will put some more clips online just because I love that so much. And obviously, we have an hour, so it's not that you don't have an unlimited amount of space. And I think that was true for a lot of the founders, right? There's this personal part of it too that makes you want to succeed, because it's not just about you, right? If you succeed, that's great, because everybody wants to be a gajillionaire. But also, you can change the game for other people. You could literally open up everybody's, that pattern matching, right? You can change the pattern. But you could also inspire people. You could be literally a role model, and someone could say, I want to be Anthony Frazier. You saw Anthony Frazier? He just sold his company for $1 billion. I want to be Anthony Frazier. That to me would be an incredibly, a great indication of the needle moving for this industry.
Chris, we've talked about some of the challenges in trying to connect minorities to technology. Maybe you can talk about why Google decided to partner with the NewMe Accelerator, and then also about just Google's efforts around diversity in general.
Sure. I'm on our diversity and inclusion team, and there's literally probably 20 or so people in this audience who participate in our efforts to help Black-owned businesses get online and be successful using our tools and just using the power of the internet to get their business online, to get in front of customers. And of course, we're a technology business, and we've seen, the immense profit, the immense growth in technology, and we don't see those businesses reflected in our customer base, and we don't see them reflected in the Valley. When we met Angela, and she, who I think is a role model for a lot of the Googlers here, someone who is successful, young, Black, female in tech. And she came to Google and spoke to, I think, maybe 30 or so Black Googlers in a room that didn't really fit that many. And then some by video conference who video conferenced in to see her. It was inspiring. And it was obvious that we needed to find ways to partner with her to help us change what we saw as a problem in Silicon Valley. So NewMe, Angela and I were sitting on stage for a panel at the Black Enterprise Conference, and it was May 23rd or something of this year, and she said, I think I want to do this accelerator. And we were here on June 16th making that happen. It was incredible, the speed with which she moved to that, which is something that at Google we know something about, which is moving really quickly. And when you see someone like that who just so embodied the spirit of that tech and quick and let's get it done, you know that you have to partner.
Could I add just one quick thing to that? And I think for the documentary, what we loved about Angela is, again, the room that I'm talking to in our doc is not a room full of technologists. I think Angela's inspiring to everyone, right? Somebody who says, against all odds, well, I have this thing, and I think I want to do it, and I think I can do it, and if I can just get some support together, I can do it. And even if I'm being driven a little bit crazy every step of the way, because that's how things go, I'm still going to try to be successful. I think that's incredibly inspirational to me. Who I hand off my technology when it has a problem. Here, someone fix that for me, thank you. So I think that my goal in this doc as well is to highlight people who are inspirational, and the only way to be inspirational is to go through something on screen, so people see what you're dealing with and the challenges, and see how you come out the other side.
So Angela, everyone in this room can appreciate execution. We know the Valley is all about execution, and we've heard several cases now that you've moved at a rapid pace. How does it feel kind of seeing your idea come from that idea on, on that Black Enterprise panel to fully executed first launch class?
It feels great, and actually every time I see the doc, it takes me really back to the moments of the summer, and it's I get all happy and stuff inside, and I can't wait, for the next cycles and everything. So it feels great, and I'm really excited to hear what everyone else thinks about it, and then once it airs on November 13th, just to see what really the world kind of thinks about it too.
So as you can see from the doc, I had a lot of opinions. So if you categorize me as the angry uncle of New Me, I'd have to categorize Mitch Kapor as the godfather of New Me. So Mitch, I want to throw a question to you. You were deeply involved in the process. Maybe tell everybody your impressions about the program, the group, and Angela, and just the process that happened, largely in your facility.
I've been involved in helping a number of accelerators, Y Combinator and others, and heard about New Me. And because it intersected thematically with other things that Frida, my wife, and I are doing up in San Francisco with the Level Playing Field Institute and my foundation, I immediately said, great, I'll do something here. When I met Angela and the entrepreneurs early in the cycle, I was really impressed. I was impressed with the seriousness. I was impressed with the dedication. And I thought a number of the ideas that they were working on were pretty good ideas. So I kind of doubled down and said, all right, I'll get more involved. I'll make some time. I want to do some mentoring, take people through the process, share my experience, and then we made our office space available to hold the demo day in. And I'm hoping and believing that with Angela being out here now, the goal of establishing New Me as an ongoing, recurring, not a one-time thing, but something that can regularly be a way to facilitate increased participation for African Americans in Silicon Valley. We're helping with that. We think that's incredibly important. Ultimately, we'd like to see it not just in Silicon Valley, but elsewhere. It's just that important. I mean, the stakes are huge, not just for the individuals, but as I said in the clip in the movie, economically, if you look at demographics in the U.S., by 2040, we're going to be a minority country, and if we're not developing every single talented individual to do what they can, we're not going to be competitive as an economy. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is like any other population of entrepreneurs, the history, background, skills, quality of ideas, persistence, there's variation among individuals. And it's been very interesting to me to see, not only during the 9 weeks, but subsequently, you can begin to see who is really more likely to succeed as the group sorts itself out. But overall, this is just such a necessary, such a gratifying thing, and I'm so pleased that CNN and Soledad and Jason and the whole team put all of the effort into this, because it is going to shine a light on this issue, and as we say, start conversations which need to happen. Silicon Valley has a very difficult time talking about race. Anybody who follows the Twitter sphere and the blogosphere has seen that play itself out in the past week, and I'm hoping that those conversations will improve and people will find it easier to talk about real and important things. Not necessarily to get everybody to agree, but to talk about one more elephant in the room.
So, Soledad,
Yes.
Mitch talked about it a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about what the effect the Black in America docs have on kind of raising the conversation on a given topic? I think we've all seen over just the last week, the doc hasn't even aired yet, and there's been a lot of activity on Twitter, but I actually only saw it on Google+, so I don't know where anyone else saw it. Was it anywhere else? I'm not sure. But, maybe talk about, how the documentaries have raised conversations, and almost how do you see that this documentary may raise that conversation?
I think the documentaries have been successful across a number of sort of categories, and in terms of spawning conversations, they've been really successful. And I sort of figured that out after the first one, when people would stop me in the airport, any airport, anywhere, and say, "You want to know Black in America? My life is Black in America. Put me on TV." Like 25 times a day. And people who loved it or hated it would say, "I hated what you did. I should be the next Black in America." Or, "I love what you did. I should be the next Black in America." And it was really clear to me that there were just all these stories that were not getting any kind of airtime, and certainly not in a long form sort of way, but that just all of stories for really, not just for African Americans, but I think for Latinos, for Asians, for Native Americans get literally no coverage at all. So, and I thought really what the Black in America series has done, I think in terms of shining a light on, you can tell stories about diverse populations, and by diverse populations, I mean women who are rescue workers at Ground Zero. And you can do really well. Again, it doesn't have to be often, I think in TV news, when we tip our hat to diversity, it's that, here you go, here, it's Women's Month, and here's the story on this, and, now it's Latino heritage, and here's the story on this, and it could be, the world is changing, the audience is changing, and guess what? Everybody is interested in these conversations. You can win, and you can do them well. So you can do quality work that wins awards, that is well done, that people want to run home and watch and be part of a conversation. So for a journalist, I look at that as sort of winning across the board, and that was really critical.
Can you just add real quick, because I think it's changed people's lives too, Dr. Perry, and
Oh.
about funding and money.
Oh yeah, that's true. There's no question. I end up keeping in touch very much. Like Angela, in 20 years, you and I will still be talking because and I'll be trying to get in to do an interview with you.
Right.
What we found is that when we did for our first Black in America, Roland Fryer, professor at Harvard, he just won a Genius Grant, and we obviously keep in touch with the work that he's doing in education. Steve Perry from the second Black in America, who has now expanded his school, which was a 6 through 12, and now he's opened an elementary school, and he's a contributor on the education space on CNN. We just continually, I think, are able to change lives. For me personally, my husband and I started a foundation after Hurricane Katrina, but after the first Black in America. And one of the young women we interviewed was a girl named Naya Buckley, and she was getting an HIV test. And afterwards, I said to her, this beautiful, smart, just sharp girl. I said, why are you here? Did you go to college? And she said, I have a baby. I have no one to handle the daycare. So I said, okay, after the doc aired, I'll pay for your daycare if you go to college. And now she's a junior at Lehman College. And we have a bunch of other people, Maria Arqueto, who we did a Latino in America too, who swam across the Rio Grande to get to America and ended up in detention and then was able to get a visa and now is on her path to citizenship. She's starting community college in a couple of months. So, I think we were able to really connect people to those stories because people were rooting and caring about those very characters. So I think we have, it sounds so dramatic to say we've changed lives, But I do think when you open things up to a conversation, you certainly allow for the ability for lives to change.
And so that all those people who stop you in the airport, we want to remind you that they can all be Black and Latino in America on YouTube every day. So park that one back here, because we're going to talk about that later.
Trademark Black in America, by the way.
Right.
Our lawyers can talk. We're good.
So Angela, maybe we can talk a little bit about, Soledad mentioned there's only so much they can show in an hour, right? So what are some of the things that happened that were key experiences for you in the group that didn't make it to the doc that you really want people to know and kind of understand?
Really, like the sleepless nights. So I think you get a little bit of that. But we also did, we did work a lot, but we really did a lot of other stuff. And I think part of this whole, being Black in technology conversation, a part of that is mentorship. So another thing that we did that didn't make it to the doc is we actually went, well, not me, but a couple of the founders who have STEM degrees actually went to UC Berkeley to speak with some children from a program called SMASH that's put on by the Level Playing Field Institute. And that was a really, really rewarding experience because you could really see it making a connection, in these kids' lives, and them coming up. Even to me, I was just there because the founders were there asking, can I email you? I have questions. I mean, it was just a really, really good experience, to have in life. So, I mean, it was tons of experiences like that, and really, I think you guys kind of got our dynamic in the house, but really the friendships that were developed out of this. Like I saw Pius and Becky last night, and the people that I'm seeing, I did move here, but I've been like heads down for the past month. So a lot of the people that I'm seeing, I haven't seen them, since the last day of the program. And just rekindling those friendships and those relationships. I mean, that was huge, and I think that's really what makes the program different from other incubators and accelerators is the residential part and these relationships that end up developing.
Chris, maybe you can talk a little bit about we understand that there's just a lack of knowledge, and I think the key part of Angela bringing these people in the house is that they were exposed to a lot of things that otherwise they may not have had knowledge of. Maybe you can talk a little about, I know you guys have programs like Google Accelerate. How do we leverage those and get those into the community in a big way to kind of make sure that more people can even know about Angela's program?
And that's what we're working on. I think we have tools that are, for the most part, free, that can empower the millions of, the 2.5 million Black businesses that are out there. And a lot of folks just don't know about it. So a couple things that we're doing is we're working with some very specific partners, like the National Supplier Diversity Network or Black Enterprise Magazine, to try to tell this story very loudly about how the web empowers business, how the web empowers growth. We're also working on some other programs to make sure that people are using, Google at home in their business, that they're using our Gmail apps and Docs apps and things like that. And when we get in front of individual folks and when we give them these products, it lights them up. We're giving away free websites to every business in America through a program that we've been piloting and getting out. In Detroit 2 weeks ago, we had 1,000 different entrepreneurs come downtown. It was a majority-minority crowd, which you would think would be the case if you were in downtown Detroit, but I'll tell you, it's not the case unless you bring in the right partners, unless you bring in folks like Angela and Hodge Flemings, one of the entrepreneurs from GoKit, who's one of our partners in Detroit. Unless you bring those folks in and they get the word out to their communities, unless you get into the faith community, unless you get into the folks who really are saying, this is something that can help your business. So we're doing things like that across the country to raise that awareness, get those tools out in front of them, and empower them to create huge businesses online.
Just a thought, Chris. There's a little company called Interactive One. We service maybe 85% of the African-American market. If you're looking for new partners, I could probably put you in touch with someone.
All right, if you know anyone.
You know what? Let's talk after. I think I can make a call.
Thanks.
So I want to open it up to questions, but before we do that, I want to give Angela the opportunity to talk to people about, what's in store for the future of the New Me Accelerator.
Wow, so all of my big ideas. So of course I want it to be everywhere, but we're taking baby steps. One of the really great things that I'm excited to finally be able to tell people today is Google is actually going to be the presenting sponsor for all of 2012. And so what that really means for the program is that we'll be based in Mountain View again, but we'll also be working out of the space here. And so that's
clappable, right?
Now I have to go into re-edit.
Yeah, so lots of re-editing for you guys, but yeah, so that's really exciting. Also, some other stuff that I'm working on is like, yes, there's the accelerator, which will still stay in the same shape that it's in. But some other things that I want to do is also have New Me Community, which that goes into other kind of sub-markets, maybe like Atlanta, Chicago, and so on and so forth. And those are really, really like community driven, where it's not the full-blown program, but it's a smaller version of the program, and we can pull from communities that are underserved. And so we are working, with some partners on that. And so hopefully I can tell you guys more about that soon too.
So great. Any questions from the group? I think we have a microphone that's ready to travel if you raise your hand.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name's Isaiah. I've been working here at Google for about a year and a half now. One thing that I thought was really interesting when watching the documentary was one of the characters, he'd had success at getting funding before and had some failures. And so for me, that kind of highlighted a bigger problem, is that once minorities actually get here, in the space and they've got the funding, it seems like even more people are not, achieving the success that they would like to. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on what's being done to sort of address what some of the bigger challenges are in staying here once you've gotten your idea adopted and gotten the funding you needed to, and what can be done or what we can do to provide resources to help people, maintain their success.
Sure. Well, I think, entrepreneurship, it's, the accelerator focuses on something that's very early stage, but it really is a journey, and it's a longer kind of life cycle. So, for Hank, part of the story that wasn't told is when he was working on Click Radio, that was in the first .com bust. So, yes, he raised $40 million, but, his business suffered like a lot of other businesses. So, in terms of how do we make sure that companies stay successful, honestly, I think all of this is really just a huge learning opportunity. So we might not know right now because there really aren't that many success stories, but over the course of years, and we should be able to get some really good data on what can actually, like what we can do to make sure that people become successful, they have exits, they can also then reinvest, hopefully in some minority businesses, and then we can really start to have a pure kind of life cycle to creating, really great companies.
Hi, my name is Cynthia. I don't know if it's working. Okay,
But hold
great.
it really,
Sorry
hold it
about
close
that.
to your mouth like that.
Thank you. So I thought the post-screening conversation was at least as interesting as the film itself. There were a couple of furious blog posts floating around the internet that were really interesting. I was wondering if you ever considered maybe doing a Google Plus hangout with Arrington and Vivek Wadhwa and like Ron Conway and just sort of getting all of them in the same room together, because it seemed like they all had different experiences and they all sort of disagreed with each other, and it'd be really interesting to sort of hear all of them interact. Rather than sort
Sounds
of
like you're
interviewing them
inviting me
one-on-one.
to be in a Google Plus hangout. The answer is yes, I'd love to.
Okay.
And anyone who wants to email Mr. Arrington, who's blocked me, is welcome. I'm kidding. No, in all seriousness, I am more than happy to be part of that conversation. And I think you're right. I think what that whole Twitter debate showed me was that there was this anger, and everybody was kind of like stuck in their spots. And really, a lot of what everybody was saying was actually about a lack of representation. So maybe we could move the conversation from being stuck down here and move it up here. I really think if you look through every single person's post, all of it, there was a sense of, well, here's what, here's part of the issue, and here's what could be done, right? That's the area of the concentric circles where we all agree. So maybe have a conversation about that. So yeah, I fully support that. I'd be more than welcome to be happy to be part of that.
Isn't the premise of Google Hangouts that everyone has to show up? I think we'd have a hard time getting Arrington to show up. So
You never know. You never know. I wouldn't assume that, maybe.
right.
Way in the back. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Nope.
I have a
Microphone.
mic. Hi, my name is Nava. I had this question, and it's open to any of the panelists. But historically, Black-owned businesses weren't really emerging, but maybe in the 90s or so. And according to the U.S. Census, between 2006 and 2007, Black-owned businesses increased by about 60%. That's huge. And granted, those Black-owned businesses were small. The fact that, culturally speaking, you had a father who either owned an auto repair shop or a mom who owned her own business in the healthcare industries said a lot about how they were sort of passing on inheritance and traditionally allowing their families to know about why it's important to have your own business. So do you think the digital divide has also created an issue between both the industries in the technology sector and also the African American community? And I just want to know what your insights are on that.
That's a really interesting question, and I think that statistic I found very, very interesting, right? This huge, blacks completely outscore on entrepreneurship, way above everybody else. And so why do we not see that translate in technology? It's not like, well, it's not really culturally relevant for the African American. No, that's not true. We far over-index in that, in entrepreneurship. And so I'm not sure the answer to that. And I do think that digital divide is part of the answer.
Yeah, and the other part of that stat, 60% growth over a 5-year period, 2002 to 2007. However, in terms of the size of those businesses, far smaller than the average size. So, and we know there's traditionally been a lack of access to capital. Something that you mentioned, Nava, was, we haven't seen the generational businesses that have helped kind of majority businesses succeed. Something that's really fascinating to us in our work with Google customers is we start to see those black entrepreneurs who are older, they're the sons and daughters of really taking over and leading those businesses' growth into the online space. So that's a promising trend that I think we can really capitalize on in terms of helping those businesses not only exceed in terms of the number of businesses out there, but in terms of the wealth that they're bringing back into the community as well.
So I want to jump in on that just because this topic in particular is something I'm really passionate about. So I believe we have, and I've said it a lot, a perception problem, right? The challenge we have is that there are a lot of African American businesses that they don't have the understanding and knowledge of the technology opportunities that are out there, and that the barriers are so low, right? You gave great examples. You said a bakery, you said barbershops, right? None of them know how technology could help them grow and scale their business, right? So I think there's opportunities there. So when you look at the digital divide, really it's about literacy today more than it's about access, right? The numbers show you that African Americans over-index on cellular devices, right? But if you go and ask them how many of them know about Square, where they could plug it in with no merchant account and immediately take credit card purchases, the answer would be slim to none. So I think the challenge is, how do we bridge that gap? How do we make that connection that they understand? I mean, Chris talked about any business having a website for free. I can guarantee that that's not made it into the African American community. And I think programs like Angela's will not only raise the level of entrepreneurship, because yes, we all want to be Facebook, we all want to be Google, but there's levels below that are incredibly successful and people can support their families and have a good living and create jobs that we have to communicate, right? So I think that's the big challenge.
Hi, Yolanda Mangolini. So question probably for Angela, or any of you can also do this. So if I think about one of the challenges for Black entrepreneurs is having access to the networks. I think I saw someone in the documentary mention that. How do you, at Google, we believe in doing things at scale. And you started with, a handful of entrepreneurs. How do you scale that? I think about, I'm a graduate of the Stanford Business School, and my best friend there is Black. He, worked at Merrill Lynch. He went to Stanford. He worked at McKinsey. We were a year behind Jeff Skull, who was a founder of eBay. So he had access to all these networks. He started his own business, and it failed. And I think about someone like that who had access to the networks. How do you scale what you do?
Yeah, I think Chris and I talk about this a lot, but I think one of the key ways to scaling something like this is really changing the format a little bit, so it might look a little bit different. It might not really look like the accelerator proper, but it might take on more of, I guess the idea that I have in my head is almost like a continuing education course, right? And then also something that's accessible online, something that can also possibly be self-guided, and then something that also pulls from networks of mentors that are highly qualified that these individuals can kind of tap into. So that's really the bigger idea that I have, like how do you scale something like this that doesn't necessarily need to be something that's a brick and mortar, you know what I mean?
So often, just kind of a quick observation, which is often there's problems that are out there that always feel so daunting. How are we going to fix education in America? How are we going to get more people who are not included, in this case, into the economy? And I'm Megan, I lead new business development here at Google, and we get to work with engineers when we're starting new things. So I have a lot of experience with the beginning and entrepreneurs. I also got to do the acquisitions of Google Earth and Maps and Picasa and other things. So I've worked with very talented entrepreneurs. And one of my observations is on the daunting problems. Two key things throughout history always are the things that end up solving them. And they come in two forms. One is in storytelling, which is somebody figures out how to tell us the story of what's happening in a way that opens our minds to know about something, and often includes not only the problem, but some of the solutions, so we can begin to pile on to it. And so Soledad, thank you for Black in America and for focusing on things, because it raises our consciousness in a way that is significant, and adding in sort of people who are doing great things, like Angela, lets us pile on, or Chris and others. And so that's the second part of it, which is whether it's a social, political, or economic invention that's going to really make actual change, it always comes from a person or a small group. It's the Margaret Mead quote, it's always true. I mean, the founding of our own country comes from these entrepreneurs. We know them, Thomas, Benjamin, Abigail, John, and they were funded by the French VCs. And so, I always I'm like, when I do development work, I'm like, we're the French, where is the talent, who are we going to help, who are we going to fund? To help in other countries, and I think in our own country. So I just want to sort of acknowledge that this is the only way out of the problem. The singular only way is to help the entrepreneurs do their thing. It's not about some kind of aid or whatever. It's about finding the top talent, as Mitch talks about, and getting behind them and helping them. And Silicon Valley, having raised $30 million here from the company that I ran in Web 1.0, it is totally an apprentice, journeyman, master thing, and we all know that who've gone through this, and it's all about the network. And I've always felt like, as we started the BOLD program, we finally broke into the talent networks of the undergraduate population and started pulling them to Google and to Silicon Valley. We need to do that with people mid-career, break into the talent networks. And in this particular case, you have figured out a way to break into the talent networks on the entrepreneurial side, and we in Silicon Valley now have to step up and help those guys, and then bring this to all the other cities and help this country, as well as the Greek economic crisis, because the only way out of this stuff is through entrepreneurship. So thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for making that.
When your questions have 20 great points, we just don't know where to jump in. It's like great point 1, great point 2, great point 3.
I think it's kind of a Yomio Ishiku follow-on question, kind of along. When you see folks who start, a lot of the startups in Silicon Valley, they tend to be computer geeks. And I think the TechCrunch guy mentioned that. So do you have any plans to get that pipeline into your program so that you don't get not so much so entrepreneurs, but people who are kind of maybe specialists from a technology perspective?
Yeah,
that seems to be the profile that works.
Sure. About half of the founders in the program were actually developers. But what I think is really interesting, and on the panel last night, Pius had a really great point. He mentioned that he thinks the pipeline issue is overplayed a little bit. Like, yes, STEM education is important and everything, but we all know, here in Silicon Valley and in the technology industry, you can teach yourself how to code. That's one of the beautiful things about it. And, Kristen, he didn't have a computer science degree, at all, but he was coding. I mean, he built his product. So, I mean, when we look at applicants, the program's very product driven. So we look at products. Like, yes, we look at the entrepreneurs and everything, but we also really look at products. But I think, I have a fine arts degree, you know what I mean? So I'm not just looking at people who have STEM degrees at all. So I really just want good people who are driven to be successful and will do what they need to do. Those people might be developers. Those people might be entrepreneurs with a development team. So,
So really quickly, I think that's an important point to bring up, right? Because one of the things that Arrington said that does ring true. One of the challenges entrepreneurs have, if you aren't technical, you have to find a technical co-founder, right? And that's not a racial thing, that's an entrepreneurial thing. The challenge that makes it uniquely African-American is that there are so few of us who take up those technology fields, which goes back to the perception problem. So how can Google fix that? I guarantee you, if you, and Mitch can probably attest to this through his programs, if you bring a busload of kids in here one day from Oakland, right, and tell them that in order to work here, they have to learn how to program, the next day the Oakland library will be empty, right? Because there's a light at the end of the tunnel. The reason why Angela's program is so groundbreaking is because there's visual examples of the possibility, right? So what we have to do is continually show examples. And in this room, I've seen, Black Googlers stand up en masse and ask questions. Those are examples that people say, you know what, it's really not that hard. And to my young woman in the back who gave us 30 good points that I can't even remember them all, she made the point that once you do that, you've triggered that change, right? You've made that exception. That's what we have to figure out to do, which goes back to Soledad telling this story.
So on that point, something that companies in the Valley can do is to continue to intensify their efforts to recognize that talent comes in many different kinds of packages. Because it's easy to do pattern matching as a VC, and it's easy to do pattern matching as an employer. You look for the right degree from the right school and so on, and that's all well and good, but there are a lot of incredibly qualified people who just look different, and they've had a much longer distance traveled. But if you're willing to look, you can see they can do the job right now. And so the face of Silicon Valley could be different than it is because there is some supply coming through the pipeline that is not landing the jobs that they could be landing. And so that's a call to action for employers right now.
That's clappable. Thank you, Mitch.
Hi, I'm from Women at Google in London and just came for the Diversity Summit. I think what you've done is just absolutely phenomenal. But I can kind of see how it seems there's less ladies in the scheme. Was that a particular challenge? Was it a focus? And going forward, is it something you're going to particularly look at, is how to get more ladies involved in this program?
Yeah, so the program, even though I think we've been dubbed like the Black Accelerator, the program's mission is really for underrepresented minorities in technology. So that is African Americans, but that's also women, and that's also Latinos. One thing that I think you guys probably weren't able to see is, like, yes, I was a woman and Tiffany was a woman and we were in the house, but Kristen's co-founder was also a woman. Pius, Becky, she's a woman. So we did have, I think a good amount of women involved. Could there have been more? Yes. I'm excited to look at applicants from 2012. So it'll be interesting to see like what the makeup ends up being in the future.
Thanks.
We're going to take about 3 more questions. That puts the pressure on everybody.
Hi, thanks for coming. My name is Sabrina Williams, and according to the documentary, I guess I'm an oddity. So I'm a Black female programmer. So I was wondering.
Clappable again, please.
And actually, I never really thought of it as that big of a deal until I got here. But I was actually, as a follow-on question to that, did you or Tiffany run into any extra problems, like being the double whammy, black and female, in the course of the program?
For me, I actually felt like people didn't listen to me a lot. And I'm kind of short, my voice is kind of soft, and I mean, I don't know, but I definitely feel like people didn't listen to me enough. But luckily, I had people like Mitch and Navarro backing me up, a lot throughout the summer. So that's something that I actually didn't expect, especially because I have a pretty strong personality. So
I'm going to steal one of the last questions. Steve Strong, wanted to ask you, get back to actually the video and say, we saw the journey from the beginning to the end, and I know you only had an hour, but I'm kind of want some insight into what were the kind of aha moments that really transformed the team from that first presentation to the end. They showed some snippets, but were there a few key events that really kind of transformed the team?
Sure. So part of what you saw was Navarro's dinner, like in the first week. That was really jarring, and people were like, oh, we got to do better, So that was one point. Then we had a midway point at Blue Run Ventures, and, people really still weren't up to par. From then, we didn't really have a hackathon, but we had a design-a-thon, and that was really to get the visual, the UI part of everyone's products on par. After that, I think Mitch spent his whole Saturday, the week before demo day, and really gave us the extra time and effort that, and extra time and feedback that was needed to make sure that people were on point. Because in reality, we only had a day and a half to actually practice in the facility. So those were all key kind of aha moments. You could definitely tell after each one of those events that people got better and better after that.
I guess I'm last question.
Marvin will add you too. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Curtis Pope. I was one of the new startups this summer. I can totally attest to what Angela's talking about. It was a very aggressive schedule, and all the different things were very instrumental in helping us to be successful. My question is more to Angela. We kind of mentioned you kind of mentioned the communities part. Is part of that communities part teaching people how to code? Do you think that's
So the curriculum for that is not set yet. So I'm not sure. I know that I want to have at least 4 different types of programs that can rotate, and they'll probably be about 4 to 6 weeks long. But I'm not sure exactly if it'll be teaching someone how to code. I mean, I know we'll definitely have to rely on a lot of partners also to help. So I'm not sure exactly what that will entail yet.
Marvin, why don't we give you the last question?
Hi, Marvin Avalos. I've been an entrepreneur for about 20 years now. Grew up in the Bay Area, right here. Macromedia, Oracle, Apple, a variety of other companies. And
now you're just showing off.
I'm in New York. My question to you is, I was once told, and I didn't realize it when I was about 23, that I was a minority in the business. And I was kind of shocked. I never thought of it that way. And so I ask you now, with the House, and kind of saying we're going to look at more of the minority group or the female group or the underserved group. Are you attracting attention that might be a little bit on the negative side because we're labeling it that way? Or are you just another great incubator like Y Combinator or NYU Polytech in New York City? I mean, that's how I see it. I see that you're taking, you're a startup of startups. Mm-hmm. And that's what was so exciting to see them in the one house, right? Well, that's going to grow next year, and it's going to be, now it's at Google. To me, that's how I see it. And so I'm curious, have you guys confronted that issue, or has that come up at all?
Yeah, I think we're a really great program, first and foremost. And that's my goal, is just to be a really great program. But there is, a problem, and we don't see women a lot. We don't see African Americans, and we don't see Latinos a lot. So really, it's a really great program, but it's also a solution to a problem that some people choose to ignore. And so that's really all I see it as.
And I was going to add one thing too. We get a similar question, right, for news stories. Well, why do the black story? Aren't you really dividing? We're really all Americans and we all should be under the same. Why do Latinos? You're kind of separating people out. And I'll give you the same answer that a woman gave on a panel for our documentary called Beyond Bravery, The Women of Ground Zero. And someone said that very thing. Why women were no more brave than the men? Why do you make it seem like the women are special? And she said, well, take a guess at how many dogs of Ground Zero stories were done. Many, and that women's stories also just deserve to be told. That, sometimes we go out of our way and not really realize that we're only telling one story. That there's sort of, we're selecting only that one story, and what we're trying to do is just open it up and tell more of those stories. So yes, do the German Shepherds of Ground Zero, do the Golden Retrievers of Ground Zero. I am not making that up. Those are stories that were done. And then also do the women of Ground Zero so that you have a more accurate picture of what the environment looks like. But, only then you're really telling the full story. To me, it's not meant to be divisive. It is really meant to just paint a more full picture.
And just on the accelerator piece, I think the one thing you can think about is anything that's birthed that's uniquely African American is birthed out of lack of access in that area, right? And I think the challenge we need to realize is just those accelerators exist, but they haven't been accepting African Americans, right? And I'm not going to speak for them about why that's the case. We just know it's not happening. So Angela's program was birthed out of a need. Right, and anytime something's birthed out of a need that people may not agree with, there's going to be negatives, but the positives far outweigh the negatives. And I think you all guys know here that there's a process in the Valley, and I think what Angela's program does is indoctrinate a new demographic to that process that feeds the need that Mitch talked about in diverse and new ideas coming into the ecosystem. So I think that's important. So we're going to wrap up. I'm going to ask you guys three things. First, on the behalf of CNN, please watch the documentary November 13th at 8 p.m.
Tell 1 million of your closest friends.
Tell 1 million of your closest friends, and we're at Google, so we know you have 1 million closest friends. The hashtag is #Black in America, so please, I know this, you guys don't do this, but tweet it as well as Google Plus it and everything else to let everybody know. The second thing is I'm going to make an ask for Angela. There are a lot of great minority entrepreneurs and engineers in this room. Please connect with her. She'd love to have you guys come through the programs and connect with the future classes of the New Me Accelerator. And lastly, please give me a hand in giving this panel a round of applause. And thank you guys.